Hello, I'm Molly Cooper, and this is a Snapshot episode where we bring you inside scoops from the travel, design, and creative spheres. It's the same Curator Spaces content, now in coffee break conversations. Today we're talking all about colour theory and translating this into both commercial and residential interiors. And I'm delighted to welcome Francesca Rowan-Plowden, who has brought the interiors at Elmy Nature Reserve, Battle Hall at Leeds Castle and Goodnestone Park to life. Francesca, welcome to Creative Spaces. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we're actually tucked up in Boys Hall. What a treat for us by this
lovely
crackling wood fire on a crisp autumnal day. It's really quite lovely.
Really lovely. Lovely colours as well everywhere.
A little bit womb-like, we were saying, but we're here for it.
Yeah, totally. Never underestimate a womb colour.
Love it. Now, before we get into colour theory and all the rest of it, I'd actually love to start with you and hear about your background. I know you've worked on some amazing projects.
Well, I've been really fortunate to work in some really beautiful houses, most of which have been historical houses, although I have done sort of developments in London and things as well. But I trained as an actress. I didn't, I always have a bit of an imposter syndrome coming on, but I didn't train as an interior designer. I trained as an actress.
No
so
way.
I went to Lambda in London and I did, full 3-4 years of course there.
Gosh.
And I basically, trained as an actress, went off to be an actress. And after the birth of my second son, I saw a little advert in the back of the Sunday Times newspaper in the property section, which was advertising for a custodian of Lamb House in Rye, the National Trust property.
Yeah.
And they wanted a tenant, and we were just living like a 2-up-2-down cottage in Teddington, and they wanted a tenant that had literary connections.
Yeah.
Although I wasn't technically literary.
Theatre, darling.
Yeah, theatre, darling. Henry James wrote sort of novels and plays.
Yes.
And as I applied, and it was a bit like applying for the X Factor. So it was, I had to write this sort of essay about why I liked Henry James and blah, blah, blah. And then they'd phone me up and I just had a C-section. So I was sort of just lying in bed reading all this stuff about E.F. Benson and Henry James. And then they'd say, 180 people have applied, you're down to the final 12, you're down to, I was like, oh God. And then eventually they're like, it's between you and another fat couple.
Yeah.
Can you come to Rye? And I was like, I can't really walk, but I'll try.
I'll hobble down.
I'll hobble down the cobbled streets.
Yeah.
And so we went down and I was interviewed by these, the curators and all the people at National Trust. And on the way back, I was basically got a phone call saying, you've got the house. And we had to break our tenancy in London and move down to Rye before the house reopened for the season.
Okay.
And so suddenly I was from this 2-up-2-down cottage, living in a sort of small, stately in Rye, but nice manor house.
Yeah.
And I was in charge of the interiors.
No way.
And opening up to the public. And I sort of inherited this team of 40 volunteers who, we were the first family to live there since the 1700s.
Yeah.
And they were a bit horrified because there was like toys falling down the stairs, dog poo in the garden, footballs in the bushes. And but I was like, the National Trust is all about houses being lived in. And anyway, cut a long story short, I couldn't act because I had these 2 children and most of my work was theatre work.
Yeah.
And people started to approach. Well, what happened is I put on a play in the garden and the Telegraph turned up and they said, we hear that like these 2 actors have taken on, can we write an article? And I was like, well, yeah, as long as you'll advertise my play in the garden. And they were like, okay. And they said, we really like what, we've done in the house. And it was massively done on a budget. And the house had 3 rooms open to the public.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the house was completely private. And we weren't allowed to touch the rooms open to the public, but we were allowed to decorate the rest of the house. And I said, well, your National Trust won't let you photograph the showrooms, but you can photograph the rooms that I've done, loosely done. And it was in the Telegraph. And then another magazine said, can we come write an article about you living there and photograph your interiors? So I was like, okay, as long as you'll mention my plays in the garden. I'd set up a theatre company by this point. And then it sort of snowballed. And eventually someone turned around to me and said, will you do it at my house? I really like your interiors that I keep seeing in magazines. I was like, what?
Will you come and watch my play?
Will you watch the plays? And I was like, okay, because I wasn't earning any money. I mean, I was putting on the plays of God, but I wasn't earning a living. And so I did one. This gentleman had several cottages on a country estate nearby, so I started doing his cottages.
Yeah.
Then I did some flats for him in London. Then somebody else, he had a flat in Mayfair, so that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
So then someone else said, oh, could you do my flat in London? And the interiors, and I was like, and I've always loved interiors. Yeah. My mum's a textile designer, so I've always been surrounded by beautiful fabrics and things like that. But I was like, I'm not an interior designer. Yeah. And then I ended up being a single mum. And I went on a friend of mine said, there's this business course in Folkestone. And it was run by one of the guys from Dragon's Den. And it was free. It was funded by Kent County Council. And I went with my business plan on my theatre company. Yeah. And he looked at it and there's like 100 people and you had to stand up in this seminar room and like pitch your business, just like Dragon's Den. And he was like, and I wanted to take it out of Lamb House and do it around the country and da-da-da. And he's like, that's never going to work. And I was like, right. And he was like, so what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a single mum. I had 2 kids at the time. And he said, well, how do you live? And I said, I do it at people's houses. And he's like, well, what do you mean you do it at people's houses? And I said, well, I do it at people's houses. And he said, do you have any pictures? I was like, yeah, they're in magazines. And he was like, what do you mean?
Time to rethink, Francesca.
Time to rethink. Like I was having a really slow moment. Yeah. I was just so like not thinking about it. And so I took in the magazines and he got all these people in the class and they were doing all different like, ingenious helmets and all sorts of weird businesses and they all had to price my work. And I was like, oh, I don't charge that much. I kind of basically just did it for peanuts. Yeah. And he was like, well, you need to give up the theatre company, which you do 1 week in the summer, and actually focus on this. And I was like, okay. And really weirdly, it's like serendipity and stars aligning. I got a phone call saying someone's recommended you. We are doing up the stately home. Would you pitch for it for the interior design? And I was like, and a friend of mine called Marcus from Macaulay and Crane and Rye, he also got the call. And I said, and she said, I've also spoken to, and Marcus and I were like, we've never done anything like this. So he said, well, we'll do it together. We'll pitch together. And we got it. And
no way.
So we had the whole renovation of Goodnesston Park. It was a 3-year job. It went from 15 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms to 12 ensuite bedrooms. And it's a 5-star luxury, well, not hotel, but hospitality venue and everything. And then Leeds Castle came to the opening of that, and then they asked me to do that, and then Elmley, and so I've been doing it for like 10 years now. So there's a very long answer to how I got into interior design, but it was completely by default and serendipity. And it was funny because there was like we had like this press launch of Battle Hall, and there was a hotel journalist and I had to sit next to her and I'd had to do this whole talk that day about what inspired me and everything, and I was so nervous. And anyway, at the dinner we sat down, I had a couple of glasses of wine, and she said, where did you train? And I was like, oh, I didn't train. I did train. I trained as an actress, whatever. And then the next day I phoned my boyfriend and her husband and I said, oh, I think I've really messed up. I've just said to a national newspaper that I didn't train. And she wrote this lovely review about how you could tell I wasn't an interior designer because it wasn't formulaic and it had a sense of drama and home and theatre to it. And it was obviously one of the nicest reviews. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to own up from here on. That's how it happens.
But that's so true. Everyone's always like, be your authentic self, and like it shows. And,
well, I think it's also like when on Instagram and people send me lots of messages how to get into design. I'm like, I'm not discrediting the places you train. They're amazing. And there's certain skills I have to employ other people to do because I didn't train in doing them as part of the design practice. But that's also like quite it's delegating is a good thing. But it's like, actually, if you just really like doing something and someone's willing to pay you for it, then don't underestimate yourself. Definitely. I think is kind of, and actually it was a matter of sort of survival because I wasn't earning money and I was a single mum. So it was like, okay, I'll just keep going with it and hopefully people like what I do.
And actually it means you've had this really interesting way of doing it, whereas most people do the theory and then they do the hands-on. Yeah. Whereas you've done it in reverse. And I can imagine you like this room looking like this because it just feels right. Yeah. And then you go and you learn about the colour theory and the rest of it.
Well, exactly.
And you're like, oh, that's why I was doing that.
Exactly. And I think with in the colour theory and interior design and everything, it's and I suppose it's the acting training is when you learn to be when you train as an actress or actor, you have to observe people.
Yeah.
You have to understand people. And I think interiors is intrinsically about understanding people and what people need, be it in, you know, somewhere like this, you know, a lovely hotel, or be it in their own home. And I suppose with training, sometimes it's very formulaic and there's right and wrongs. And I always say there's no right or wrongs in interiors. Yeah. It's entirely up to what the purpose of that building. Is it a hotel? Is it home? You know, what the purpose is of that room? What do you want from that room? And that informs what colours you choose, what fabrics you choose, how you want it to feel. And that's what I think the connection for me is with acting and interiors, is it's about people.
Yeah.
And with colours particularly, I like colourful interiors. I probably like colourful interiors more than I like colourful clothes.
Yeah, it says the woman dressed in camel.
In camel. But that was because I wanted to feel calm. And it's a really weird thing because I was really stressed this morning. Like, you know, I had a son off school yesterday and and I had to make sure that everyone was getting picked up this afternoon. And I was like, you know, I'm going to talk about interiors. I should look really flamboyant and colourful. And I was like, it's a podcast, they're not going to see me. But, you know, I should, you know. And then I was like, but actually, today I just feel like I need to be calm.
Yeah.
So I've worn calming camel.
You know, I love a bit of beige, so I'm here for it.
but I've got the red lipstick, which, as I always say about red lipstick, is it's that instant pick-me-up. Which is something I was chatting about the other day, which is, during the Second World War, there were three things that boomed, which were chocolate, which is understandable, the cinema, which I don't think would happen nowadays so much because you've got streaming and TV and everything, and red lipstick, because women wanted, you know, it was wartime, it was oppressive, it was, you know, money was tight and everything, but they wanted to pick me up. So they'd buy red lipstick.
No way.
And it's it boomed in the Second World War along with chocolate cinema. And I do have the red lipstick theory, which is, you know, if you're feeling a bit rubbish, pale, withdrawn, tired, slap a bit of red lipstick on.
Yeah, well, especially this time of the year, take all the colour we can get. Yeah,
and I think that's the same with interiors now. Is that I don't really believe in trends, and especially when you're like in a lovely old building, they're not going to be. The interiors is not going to be determined by a trend. It's got to suit the building, and again, the purpose of the building, as it were, if you want a nice cozy room or whatever. So colours are really important, and how you bring that into interiors. For example, red, we're in a red room right now, is a really good room for dining, kitchens, because it's said to stimulate you and kind of activate the desire to eat as well.
Really?
But also to it's stimulation. So that's why Coca-Cola and Virgin have red branding, because it stimulates people.
No way.
Waiters and waitresses get, I think it's like 12 or 25, I can't remember the percentage, but they get a higher percentage of tips if they wear red.
No.
And footballers perform better if they're wearing red.
Really?
That's why red is such a popular colour.
Isn't there that thing that if you date someone and they're wearing a red sweater or something, you're more likely to fancy them as well?
Oh, I've never tried that.
You're only telling me now?
I was thinking that I was just wearing the red lipstick. I should have gone for the whole red look. And yellow. Yeah. So I have a yellow study office.
Lovely.
Because that is said to incite creativity and play. And that is also, I mean, there is a science of colour, which people do. And if I wasn't working and looking after 4 children, I'd happily take a year off and go and, you know, do a master's in colour. I don't know if that exists. But and yellow is why lots of children's branding is yellow. So like Play-Doh and things, because it's meant to incite creativity and play. And so if you're doing an office or a playroom or a room that you want to be creative in, let's say a studio or something, then yellow is a really good colour.
Interesting. It's funny because you grow up and you're always like, green and blue calming, but you never really think about other colours maybe having their own things they bring, like yellow and imagination. I didn't know that.
No, totally. It's said to make you more imaginative. Blue is really good for bedrooms. Sometimes people find blue bedrooms. I have a friend who said, I'm never having a blue bedroom, it's too cold. But in fact, it's really calming. Yeah. And that's why most uniforms are blue and navy, because they make people feel safe and they give a sense of authority. So if you have a blue room, it's said to make you feel cozy and safe.
so true.
And calm. And I suppose in the municipal sense that you use blue a lot, and sort of there's what I call really bad hospital blue, but actually it's meant to calm people down and feel safe and secure. And that's uniforms and navy.
Wow.
Red is, as I said, the food and everything, but also it's also sent to be really lucky. That's why the Chinese have red on their little red envelopes. And historically, red was used, particularly it's why it's a really good colour for historic houses. So Henry VIII was obsessed by red, and that was because of the religious paintings that happened before. And so he was like, I want red on the walls because it makes me look powerful and rich. And Queen Elizabeth I, I'm spurting facts at you.
I love this.
But Queen Elizabeth I, she loved red, partly because, growing up with everything. But she wanted to wear red for her coronation, and she wasn't allowed to because she had to look virginal.
Oh.
So she had all her ladies in waiting dress in red.
Really?
Yeah, so it looked, rich and powerful, but then she looked virginal on the white, and it also made her stand out more.
Yeah, pop.
She was colour popping.
She was colour popping before it was a thing.
I'm going to colour pop. So yes, it's the whole theory of colour and interiors, I think, is about people essentially and how they want to feel. So when I'm doing an interior, be it in a residential property or a commercial hotel or something, it's like, what's the purpose of this room? Is this a dining room? Is this a bedroom? Is this, if it's a family, what do you do in this room as a family? What do you want to do? Like, what are you not doing in this room? That's gonna, that you want to do in this room. Like, if they say, oh, the kids don't want to play in here. And it's like, well, it's kind of a grey, beigey room. Uninspiring. They're not going to play. If you paint it yellow and then you highlight that with fabric choices and the colours that you use in the fabrics, then it kind of gives that sense of comfort or whatever purpose that room is. And it's funny with the hotel projects I do. I often get a lot of messages going, what was that colour in the room I stayed in at Elmley or whatever? And I think people are nervous about choosing colours. Yeah. I think I look at a paint shot and get excited. But that's just the weird way that my brain works. Whereas I think a lot of people look at a paint chart and they go, it's too overwhelming.
Like decision paralysis.
Like literally, it's too overwhelming. And they go, I'd really like my house to be more colourful, but I don't know where to start. Yeah. And that is, I think that's where lots of people are often not brave enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just said that I love beige and my flat is so beige, but over the last few months I've been so lucky to see all these amazing spaces, and suddenly I'm like, oh, maybe I want a statement room too, or like maybe I want a bright green banquette in my dining area. And then I'm like, it feels like that commitment, like you're committing. It's much harder to change a wall colour than maybe clothing.
I think if you're wanting to bring more colour into your home, it's always good to start off with like cushions and things. Or something that's not too roomy, and it is like a pale yellow or or a soft green or something. So it's a kind of a veer. I always think setting plaster by Farrow & Ball, which is basically the colour of setting plaster, is a really good way of introducing colour. Because it's a soft pink, so it's a bit of colour, but it's almost kind of just slightly kilter of a neutral. And with that, and it pretty much goes with any colour.
I think that's so interesting. I guess the other thing you kind of touched on then was this, going back to Henry VIII, it's like this commitment, not only will I change my mind, but will trends change and decorating for like a certain moment in time. How does like this whole colour theory relate back to like bigger shifts in like literally preferences, like pink is in, pink is out?
I think it's fashion and interiors are very cyclical. And normally one determines the other. And normally it's the fashion that comes first. So whatever the fashion houses bring out. So if they're bringing out big florals or whatever, about a year later, it will come out in interiors fabrics. And there are trends in the sense that, but they kind of they go round in circles. So you might be out of fashion for a bit, but it will come back. You just hold it in there. But it's my theory is that I think when times are difficult, which obviously the world is it's kind of struggling to spin at the moment, if you know what I mean. It's like when you get a globe. what's it called? And the kind of semicircle, it's like at the axis.
Yeah.
And you spin it and it spins around. You're like, oh, it's and then sometimes you spin it and it just doesn't spin.
Yeah, it's
kind
stuck.
of feels like that.
Mm.
And I think when people are feeling austerity and insecurity and just kind of unease in the world a bit, they return to things that are nostalgic, and colour historically is quite nostalgic. So post-war, everything was quite, you know, especially the Art Deco. They had the Art Deco and it was all really ornate and lots of glitz, and then it just went really down, and it was just brutalist, you know, concrete and architecture. And then post-war, people like in the 50s, they started bringing all these crazy kitsch prints and colours and fabrics and crazy kitchens and, you know, laminate doors in orange and pink and all this stuff. And then that went on into the 60s and 70s, and the 80s was just like an explosion of that. It just built and built. And then the 90s, it all just got pared back. Everyone was like, you don't want to show wealth, you don't want to show this, you don't want to be that. We're all going to wear Calvin Klein kind of style slip dresses. No colour. Everyone's going to look grunge or heroin chic or whatever it was. And it's going to be Buddhas and beige and grey.
Buddhas and beige.
And it's just that everyone's going to calm down. And then it was sort of like that through the 2000s as well, you know, 50 Shades of Grey. And, you know, there was a play at the National, and the opening scene is like all these different variable colours of different beiges, and they're like, and the husband's going, I can't remember what the play was, it was brilliant, but the husband's going, I literally can't tell the difference between these different paint colours. And that was kind of it. Everyone was like, oh no, this is elephant's breath and this is wimple white, and they're like, what? You know, and now we've had that kind of calming sort of era, and then we're like, no, that is not, I'm not feeling comforted anymore. And suddenly there's tassels on everything. There's swags on curtains. They're pelmets again. And we go, actually, the 70s and 80s was quite fun. And it made us feel much better about all the rubbish that was happening in the world. And we wanted to look colourful and wear gold bangles, you know, and the fashion's coming back. You know, like I was, you know, looking at like my kids' girlfriends' outfits. And I was like, you're kind of wearing I wasn't a teenager in the 80s, but I was like, you're wearing high-waisted jeans and little crop bomber jackets, and you got big hair and big gold hips. You look like 1986. They haven't quite got the perm yet, but that'll probably come back.
It's coming back.
It's going to come back. And I'm like, and then same with interiors. I was thinking, there was you know, this, you know, for ages we didn't do pelmets, and there's pelmets on curtains again, and there's swags and tassels and fringing and all these mix of prints and chintz. And I think it is just the fact that we kind of go, I want to feel warm, the colour's back, you know, I want to have a nice, you know, loads of houses got loads of colour. People are actually being braver than they used to be. And I suppose you still have the Scandi chic look as well. And that's the sense, I think that's very much tied in with the trend for wellness at the moment. So I'm not saying that still doesn't exist, but even that, there's a lot more luxury in it than it was before. You've got all the fur and the, you know, the boucle and the sheepskin and all that stuff. Boucle's massive.
Oh, it's having a moment, isn't it? I actually wore a boucle coat here today.
Did you? I mean, I love a boucle. Don't get me wrong.
Have said that. Cancel. Boucle's cancelled.
But I went to Design Week and everything was boucle. And I was like, I've got 2 dogs and 4 children. And like a lot of my clients have dogs and children.
No way is that staying beige.
There's no way that white sofa. It's like it's for like single people with no animals.
I feel you.
With no kids or anything. It's sort of, but it's a way of adding texture into a neutral. And I think it's the texture that's really interesting with the more neutral schemes and sheepskins and
definitely.
You know, kind of there is quite a lot of velvet and things like that, even if it's a colour thing. But with the more opulent interiors, it's everywhere because it's sort of.
And do you think that's kind of linked back to COVID? Everyone was actually at home, way more than they were, and they were like, actually, I want to do something with this house that I've not really done much.
I think it made people. I mean, yes, definitely. There was so much emphasis on home, and actually, a lot of companies, although a lot of people suffered financially in COVID, a lot of companies did very well, especially the homeware companies, because people were suddenly ordering paint and sofas and things like that. And, you know, working from home, they were all doing up their offices and there was a new space. And I think people did suddenly go, actually, I've been neglecting this part of life and me. because most people, they just go to work, they go home, they sit on the sofa, they have their dinner, and they can't, it's nice. Whereas like when everyone was like, actually this is, and so people who weren't necessarily interested in interiors became more interested in interiors. And I certainly saw on Instagram, it was so much more content and home renovations and home makeovers and that sort of trend to follow people who were doing that as well. And I think that it's definitely come from COVID and wanting that, like with the charity, wanting that safe space to be in, so that, you know, when you are at home, you have got a haven which you can lock yourself away from the rest of the world. And if you choose to turn on the TV or not, you know, it's up to you. But you've got a lovely
space to come back to at the end of the day.
And some cushions and colour to make you feel better. But I think, and I don't think that's going to go away.
No,
the working week for most people is sort of split quite a lot now. And I just don't think it's going to go away. I think the home is going to become more and more important.
I completely agree. And for anyone who's listening in now and they're thinking, oh yeah, I actually do want to do something with my home, or maybe they've just moved, what are some really good, like, hands-on practical tips for like getting started? If you're thinking about colour, if you're feeling overwhelmed by those colour palettes, where can people start?
One thing, if you're wanting to be more adventurous with colour, one of the things I'd recommend is you just get a piece of A4 paper. You know, get your sample pot, you paint the A4 piece of paper, just printer paper, it doesn't have to be like special artist paper, and you literally pin it around the room that you're planning on painting in different lights, different times of the day. It will reassure you, because you'll get, oh, that looks really nice when the sun in the east comes across like that, or that looks really cold, because a lot of people, you know, they commit to the room and then they go, actually at night time it's really austere or whatever. So that's a practical tip of painting. Just move it around, and then you're not committing to like painting on the wall. I always start with a piece of fabric. So if they've got a particular cushion, or some curtains that, you know, their mum's given them, or something, or a picture, even a picture, or a print or something, is a really good colour reference. Interesting. And work. Because I think also if you commit to the paint colour straight away, then you go, okay, I painted this room red. I have no idea what I'm going to put in it, and then it can kind of go a bit disastrously wrong. Whereas if you, let's say you start with a piece of fabric, even if it's like a Keelam cushion or something, you've got so many different colours in there that actually you can go a bit neutral, or you could go really bold, but it's going to all bring it together. And if you keep that piece of fabric, cushion or picture or whatever it is as a colour reference, is your reference throughout your interior, you're not really going to go wrong, because that's like your sort of template of what you're going to stick to. And then I think the main thing is also, it's like, what do you want from that room? It's like what I said at the beginning. It's like, what purpose does that room serve to you? Is it where you're going to sleep and relax and forget the rest of the day? Is it where you're going to entertain? Is it going to be where you just sit and watch TV? You know, have you got a fire in it? Do you want it to feel really cozy, or do you want it to be light and airy because you're working in there? You know, have a yellow one if it's an office and study. So it's kind of like, work out what you want. It's a bit like having a relationship.
Okay.
You work out what you want from it. And whether you like the look of it, and then you work backwards from that, and then you kind of achieve, you know, you work towards it. Okay. You know, you've got to have a relationship with your home. It's like one of the biggest relationships, and probably one of the biggest expenses, whether you're renting or buying, that you're ever going to spend money on. So you've got to enjoy it.
Definitely.
But I've never thought of that like that. That's
so interesting. Think about what you want from it, and then go get that red sweater out.
And go and get your red sweater and your red lipstick.
Put yourself out there.
You know, if you want your soft sheepskin rug or whatever it is, or your boucle, you know. But it's you know, homes are about people. And everything fundamentally, isn't it? Whether it's good or bad, is about people and how. And so I think if you neglect your home, you're slightly neglecting a bit of yourself. And that doesn't mean you have to spend loads of money. And they're like companies like Dunelm and you know, the supermarket, you can get great stuff that aren't breaking the bank. And literally, you know, just like a cushion for £12 can like transform your bed.
Exactly.
And you go, oh, I really love that cushion. And it's also like a treat to yourself. Like it's the lipstick.
It's lipstick.
You know.
In textile form.
Oh,
well, it's been such a pleasure chatting. I'm feeling very inspired to go and paint my beige flat now.
Yes. Please send me pictures.
I will do. Before we do go, I do have a little closing tradition of a quick fire round.
Okay.
So these are all interiors-y design themed.
Okay.
So let's give it a whirl, shall we?
Okay, cool. Yeah.
What is one interiors trend from the past that you would like to see back?
Oh, volunteers turns on the past one. I do like paneling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's craftsmanship as well. I think that's probably the trend would be craftsmanship. I think we underestimate craft nowadays. And, you know, there's so many skilled people out there.
Yeah, I love that. And we should champion them.
Yeah, really should.
Okay. And what is one piece of furniture that everyone should invest in?
A really good statement chair. I personally would go for a nice dual colour velvet or a lovely leather club chair.
Oh, love
You want it to be comfortable. Bit of luxury would be nice, but that's a statement chair will turn a room around.
Okay. And then what's your favourite room to create or reimagine?
I think it's a room that a family spend time in. I was going to say bedroom, because I think that's really important for your sense of peace of mind at the end of the day. And it's also where you start your day and end your day. Yeah. But probably because my life is very family orientated at the moment. Maybe my old self pre-kids might have said my bedroom. Yeah. But I think actually it's where you spend time with your family. Okay. Because everybody you've got to all enjoy that space together.
Definitely. Okay. And what's your go-to paint colour?
I think it's going to have to be setting plaster.
And the one and only.
The one and only. Other paint colours are available. Yeah. But it's fail safe. Bedroom, hallway, kitchen, office.
Yeah. Whack-a-bit. Setting plaster.
Maybe there's a reason that plaster was made that colour in the first place. I don't know. I don't know the chemical compound of it, but it's a really good colour.
I love it. And then finally, are there any design icons who have really influenced you and your style?
In interiors.
Or fashion, whatever you want.
Funny enough, I would probably say Coco Chanel. And although she's quite monochrome. Yeah. But I've read quite a lot about her, and I think she was a pioneer in women in design, which I like to champion a lot. We do. There are a lot of women in design. There's not a lot of women in architecture and construction, not as many as there should be. And then especially in the time that she sort of, you know, built her business, it was a very dominated world. She just had her own style. Yeah. And that was it. Yeah. And people happened to love it, and she made an amazing brand out of it. And although her interiors are very interesting, she'd use colour and, you know, beautiful chinoiserie and all sorts of things like that. But I think as a person per se in design, it would have to be her.
That's brilliant. That was a lovely answer to end on.
Thank you
so much for talking to me.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely. Thank you so much.
Wow, Francesca, you're an absolute queen. That was so fun to record, and I'm feeling incredibly inspired to go and paint all the walls in my very beige flat. If you enjoyed listening, as ever, please do hit that follow button or leave a review. It really means a lot and keeps the podcast going. And I'm super excited to share that come January, I'll be kicking off the first ever Curated Spaces mini-season, the London edition, with top spots to stay, work and play around the city. We've got some incredible spaces lined up, and I can't wait to share their stories with you. But we still have a few more episodes to wrap up 2023 with, so I will see you next time for more Curated Spaces.